And we are live with Peter Brunner, the director.
Hello, very nice to be with whoever is right now in the channel and listens to us.
Yes, and Peter is known to the festival. We had selected to the night in 2019, and he had so graciously and warmly come to Pendance at that time in search of a DP. And luckily, he
Right, I forgot about that.
he found this DP not at Pendance but elsewhere, and that entire process that he was going through in 2019 was what led to Luzifer. So let's talk about this beautiful film. We've received so many comments in our emails, and they're nice. Some of them are confused but intrigued. Some of them are impressed and blown away. I remember at Pendance, you had in 2019, you had alluded many times to film sets being like a surrogate family, and that had always really touched me. And I think when people hear about how yourself and the actors and the crew and these real people made this film, I think they're going to be very happy to know that you did find that surrogate family. So let's talk about Franz and Susanna and like your collaborators on this film.
Yeah, Robert, thank you very much. I always or I'm drawn back to when I have been the first time to Pendance, and what I like too much is like that all of you guys are so involved in the filmmaking process, because you're also filmmakers and you have a genuine love and respect for the stuff that we are doing. And I have the feeling like with Luzifer, of course, I mean it's based like it says in the press material, it's based on a true story and stuff like this. But like in the process of generating a collaborative team situation, you always have to find individuals who can not only give like a real presence and a real face. If you search for non-actors, or I mean, I like more to call them guides, because they bring their life experience. But it's like you don't only search for a real face for a real story, but I'm always looking for also like a friend, or like a real spiritual warrior, in the way that I can learn from the person about the character that I wrote. So I think it's never, power over, but always power with. You have power with someone, and if it's like that you have power over someone, I would highly doubt it. Also, it would not be like a climate that I would like to be around on a set. But then, of course, it's then also like in the nature and in the DNA of filmmaking, that certain decisions need to be made. But when you refer to Susanne or Franz, I mean, it's like on one side, it's a totally diametrical opposite, because like Franz is a professional actor, and he's like, he comes from dancing, and he's a very, very unique kind of his own curator of stuff that he does. And I think like his hugest strength, when people always ask me blah, 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 blah about Franz and stuff, I feel like a very strong, a very, very unique quality he has, and what he always like, you can see it in his work, is like the curation of his own material, because he reads all of the scripts himself. You have like different actresses and actors who have those agents, and they search everything out for them. Of course, Franz also has representation, but I think it's a very beautiful thing that he looks for very certain kind of challenges. And with Luzifer, of course, the challenge was that he was surrounded by an environment of people who come from their own lives, which play versions of themselves, and are not like trained professional actors. And with Susanne, it was like this, that she's a pastor, and she's a priest, and she's also like an artist in her own right. And she went through a hellish situation when she was growing up, through the violence of her father. but she stuck all of these pieces together again. And I think like it's a daily exercise for her to stick those pieces together, because it's very difficult to live with this certain trauma. But she really, really created a character. So she's not playing a version of herself,
Right.
like that Maria is Susanne, but Susanne was very strongly, like, I think 4 to 6 months before we started shooting, we started also collaborating daily. She wrote like a diary for her character, and there were many, many, many things that we went through that she really, really little by little found the character, and we worked on it and we rehearsed, and we can speak
Right.
about this, but I want to stop now my Dadaistic stream of consciousness.
This dynamic of working with a quote unquote non-actor, of course, and working with, one of probably the most prominent actors now growing up in Europe, in France, who I first watched France and I was blown away by him in 2015, Victoria. I don't know if you've seen it. Of course, you've seen the film. And I really enjoyed his performance in that, and it was just something that really stuck with me. And now, obviously, he's quite an amazing actor. But what I found most interesting is how the dynamic between the two was not necessarily how someone would assume the dynamic would be with a trained actor and a non-professional. It was a lot of give and take. And he's actually said before that she was teaching him things as well. So talk about how important it was that you cast an actor who had that openness to experience in that moment and that not judgmental element, and also talk about that sort of interplay between the two.
Well, it's interesting that you read or heard that he was learning something from Susanne. I think like it's impossible to not be in Susanne's orbit and not being kind of taught by her something, because like there is a certain, I don't mean it in a teachy way, I mean it in the way there is someone who has a very strong life experience. She was like soul condolencing in prison, like the leader of the German Hells Angels guys, and she was like for 2 years working with him to, don't carve for alcohol anymore and stuff like this. And once he was released from prison, they made this big Hells Angels party, and the little Susanne came there, and he had a beer again in his hand. And she was like, "Don't you dare drink this beer," and blah, 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 in front of the other Hells Angels guys. And it was like a scene that they really were alarmed and kind of, shall we kill this woman? What's going on, And he was really coming down in a way that he really respected and tried to tell his people, this is the woman who was in prison there for me. This is the woman who made it possible for me to find a spiritual strength. This is the woman who is allowed to speak to me like this. And there's like, it's like one example. But the thing is, Susanne also was like in some moments, when we did with Franz together 1.5 months of very strong preparation when he was there. We lived like in a bar, as like in a farm together, and did all of those rituals that also happen in the film. And we really tried to have, it was like a micro sect kind of thing, And if it would have been for Susanne, he would have slept, at her feet.
Yeah.
But of course, there needs to be like a certain, it's both of them, and they had to find it together. And I was there with a social worker. And, the Eagle training was also like, was the last phase of the Eagle training, because Franz did work with the Eagle over certain periods over 1 year. We went always to this guy who has the Eagle. But like this 1.5 months of being in this kind of micro sect where we find the own theology for the two for the two characters, where we try to, find a real, their real behavior kind of thing, he's kind of her body, because like with her problematics that she has, and like with, ex-alcoholic and stuff like this in the mountains. Also they found some kind of a symbiotic, also symbiopsychotoxiplasm kind of craziness, where they,
Yeah.
like in this documentary, where like, even if the situations are not really, how can you say, there was always like some presence or some behavior that we little by little found and adapted to, which became a reality for us. And Susanne, of course, brought in very strongly her theology, and we had
Yeah.
to, which was at some moments pretty wild and like weird in a way, because it was real for her. She really became this character, and it was an inspiration for us, because usually those actors always say, some of them, like a Benedict Cumberbatch, they speak about method acting and stuff like this, and then it's like, and sometimes it feels like, or when Lady Gaga speaks about something like this, to me, it always feels like it's like some kind of a pop cultural advertisement for something, but sometimes you see people really inhabiting these lives of fictional characters and become someone, like Caleb Landry Jones, for example. Also, I do my new film with him together, a film which is like about homelessness, and we have been now 3 months in Texas researching, and it's also very beautiful again to see someone really falling, into a character little by little by little. And Susanne had also this quality of suddenly becoming someone. And Franz has a very different approach. Franz is kind of most of the time really in a different kind of a control. And it's beautiful that people, as actors and actresses, have different tools and different instruments, and I think it's wonderful, if they can fruitful have this dialogue, like you said before, with Susanne and Franz.
I'm curious, actually. I was wondering when I saw that you were making a film about homelessness in Texas. Did you happen to get in touch with Alan Elias?
With Alan Elias?
Yeah.
No, who is this? We are in touch with most of the organizations, like in Dallas and in Houston and in Austin, who are like nonprofits or with the public, also with the state side, are advocating.
Ticket for a Dream. So do you remember at Pendance, there was another Caleb film at Pendance that you watched, Friday's Child, which became... Yeah. So the director of that film, Alan Elias, he was actually there, and one of the things that he had mentioned was that he was looking to push for films that were advocating for or showcasing youth in crisis. So homelessness would be up his alley. So I was actually just deeply curious when I saw that you were set scouting in Texas about a film about homelessness with Caleb Landry Jones. I'm like, this is too many overlaps for it to be a coincidence. I'm wondering if that was it, but it wasn't. So that's interesting, and I'll definitely let Alan know that you're making this film, so that maybe he can support
Friday's Child is one of the producers from Friday's Child is also working with us, but isn't it from AJ Edwards? And
AJ is the director, but Alan is the producer.
Okay. No, so
you're working with AJ.
No. As we are working with, as we have many, like 4 producers now on the film, but one of them, the Texas-based producer, is Christian Sosa, who also worked on Friday's Child. Yes,
he did. Yes, and Christian and I think Alan were very closely together. So that's very interesting. I'm wondering. I'm very curious if there was an overlap with Caleb or if there was an overlap with Pendance, but that's very curious for me. Speaking of Caleb, your numerous Q&As and roundtables of Pendance have stuck with me and informed, and I think I've even written to you in the past about how much they helped me work through some stuff in my life and helped me understand not only myself. And I'm always hoping that other people are able to latch on to your words and put that into themselves and maybe understand themselves a little bit better. But one of the things that, to speak of your last protagonist, Norman, and you had this thing, and there's something that always runs through my mind. Norman is in a process. I think you said it at a record number, like 800 times during Pendance, that Norman is in a process. And I love that that character so much for the fact that he is confronting himself. So talk about like the parallel with Susanna, because I have another question also. I'm sorry if I'm rambling a little bit, because I have two
No.
questions that are somewhat related, but also loosely related. The other question is this notion that of a non-actor. So for me, we've gotten to know Susanna very, very little over Instagram, because she shares all of our stuff, and she sends messages, and we write to her in German when we can, in the brief German that we know, and she tries to answer back. And I feel through the screen what you're talking about with Susanna. Like there's definitely such a strong presence and self-ownership and authorship and intrigue, that you're just drawn to this person, and yet at the same time somewhat terrified of this person, because there's a spontaneous nature to this person. And I'm remembering back to when somebody told me, the litmus test for a great actor, and I think that both Caleb, Franz, and Susanna would all pass this test, that if you sat across from them at a coffee table, you could not predict what they were going to say or do next. Always. That unpredictability, I think, is what makes actors very inherently interesting. So did Susanna already possess certain qualities that lend themselves to acting? And, is her process reminiscent of the same process that drew you to your character, Norman?
I mean, it's interesting that Susanne, I found her through a very coincidence, because I was like for 1 year or over 1 year, like searching for this Jeanne d'Arc kind of person who has like a true faith, which is so strong, that she could really carry also this film, but also like someone who where there is something in her behavior and something behind her eyes and in her voice, which is like a poetry that the person has to have, And I think like we were trying to find like a professional actor in the beginning, and she was amazing, but I always like looked also on the side with people to find a real person who is a real version of this character in the real world. And there were many very interesting individuals that we found. But at one point, I was looking at a podcast with a full body tattooed Canadian pastor, a female pastor. And I was thinking, oh, these tattoos could probably be interesting for our film, because I always wanted her to be tattooed. So I was then Googling, a female pastor with tattoos. And then came this bold kind of little human being. I thought it's an Irish priest or something, like clicked on it. And then I saw, oh, it's not an Irish priest, it's a woman. And then I saw, oh, and she's a German woman. And then I was Googling her like on YouTube, and she had her own channel, and she was sitting in her own channel, like little views, but she was talking about a painting that she did, And as she was talking and speaking about this painting that she made, she really, like an umbilical cord from the painting, also to her and to the audience, something happened where I was a little bit going back, And I felt like, oh, interesting. This is what I'm looking for the audience to feel with the mother, There has to be something, that you're magnetically kind of in her orbit and you cannot help yourself. But at the same time, sometimes there is something that she can translate because of her past, that is like really a little knife into some of your emotional origins, and like this dialectic. I found this again when I talked to her, and she's like, she really understood the creative process, even if she did not, ever acted in a film. But what she always says when she does, like in church, when she's like as a pastor talking to the people, or at a funeral or something, she says she only has one take, she only has one take. So she's kind of, there is something where she has like a feeling for it, and I think I learned from her. We tried to work together in a way that was very difficult, because I was triggering her a lot. which is difficult for someone who went through a catastrophic, horrific past where the father raped her like for 10 years as a child. Someone like this will never trust anyone really again, and I'm happy for her that she has a husband who is really like her bodyguard and defending her, and she can defend herself. But what I say is like she has a real source trust person again in her life,
Mm.
But for us in the collaboration, of course, it was very difficult sometimes because, there is someone going to a very different place who is usually not leaving the house other than for going to the sermon that she holds, for the service that she holds, And so it was like, and with Norman, what you were saying, like Norman, for the people who didn't see To the Night and are listening, like it's a film about a person who went through severe trauma and has survivor guilt, and within a creative process where he's like a light installation artist, he tries to kind of overcome the demons that he was confronted with in his childhood, and he tries to protect his family. But in the end, it's an ongoing process where this family tries to work it out, and it's a film where we try to do something where individual trauma is not sugar-coated, like in the Joker, for example, where I have the feeling that like trauma or psychological, so mental problems of people is used in the Joker, in my opinion, like a dramaturgic gimmick. It's like a reason for something, and I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to criticize a film that everyone loves. This is my honest feeling about it. It's like not loyal to the people who really go through this stuff,
I think it would be fair to say not everyone loves the Joker, and I certainly have very similar criticisms to it. One of the things I've always found in your work, and at least the work that I have seen, is the 3 films that I've seen from you, is a commitment to honesty. An honesty to the process and an honesty to the script to the best of your ability, but honestly also an honesty to the question at the heart of what you're exploring. So there's am I correct to assume that there's a process that you yourself are exploring through these films, through these questions, and what did
sorry,
that's the alarm to get onto the I'm wondering if what you learned from this film, apart from obviously learning everything you learned, but what you learned about yourself in this film.
I mean, I have to say, filmmaking for me is not this thing that you want to have like a therapy or something like this Bergman thing. I think it's like it would be too selfish. I think like filmmaking is very much like trying to create a social sculpture with other people. And if you really think that you are like an architect filmmaker who can do everything alone and write their stuff and make their drawings and say everyone where they have to stand and what to do, I think like it's a world, like a Hitchcock thing, and we already have so many people who worked like this, and I think like it's this solipsistic weirdness where I feel no, so this is definitely not what is interesting to me. I like much more like this stance of a gardener, where you bring together certain kind of like individuals that you love that are probably much smarter than everything that you can come up with, and your responsibility is kind of to really, really, really try to have of course you're with them in the field, but you're also in a distance, and you protect yourself to have a distance that you can see when they are blossoming up in a way together, and there is an ecosystem that is generated between like certain kind of things that you put together, that you can take them and put them to a little other place and let them grow there better, but it's like it's something where you are informed by the other, and the other is allowed to grow freely, and I think like this is something that is my process right now very, very important, like for the new film Down the Arm of God, that we're going to shoot this November, it's also like very strongly it will be informed by guides, also like non-actors, by real people who experienced very important things that will inform the film, you know, like the chronicle homelessness. And it would be not right, you know, if I would suggest visually or suggest from a certain, you know, stance what I want from them too much. You know, I have to find a method with my main actor how we can have power with them, you know, and not power over them. And I think as long as there is this collaborative aspect where I don't know, it's a weird magic trick, but in the end, it's like something that cannot happen otherwise, because it grows then with itself. But the thing is, like, of course you have a script, and of course you have situations, and of course you have turning points, and of course you have very certain scenarios and very specific. But because of that, you can let go. You know, you can really let go when you cast and find the right people. You know, and you work on the script a little bit more. But like, so I live for this process where it's really this social sculpture. You know, so what I mean with social sculpture is like it's not my therapy. You know, for me. It is something where we try to create something that is then in the social eye in front of people within a cinema or on a screen, and a dialogue can happen with people who want this dialogue to happen, you know, and
You alluded to this concept of like process and finding things as you're going, because you do have the skeletal structure of the script, and you understand your points and your beats of your film, and so there's elements that you can leave up to chance or spontaneity on the day of. But there are directors out there who are very tight-fisted, of course, control method. You know, they're very controlling about every element of their film. There's so many things that can go wrong when you shoot a film the way you shot this film, in my opinion. Okay, like there's a lot that can go wrong, there's a lot that can go right, but there's so much that's left up to chance, right? If we
I mean, look, for example, I have it here because I just showed it to my new assistant. This was like, because we create something like this again. Wait, this is so crazy. But this is like, you know, this was like a Bible. And it's like, it's for every department, for everyone. You have like, you know, you have like every scene, every little things that are needed. It's all planned. It's 100% planned. Every little shit is planned. But only if you plan it really months and years before, that you can give all the departments all of their tools in the hand, you know, and you communicated everything, and you communicated all the actors. Then you can, in my opinion, then it is okay, you know, to let go and let the people stand for themselves. But it's not like, oh, we are all free, we can, because then it's like you put too much on the shoulders of the people. You know, you have to, you know, you cannot just say to a good actor, you know, I have no idea what this is about, just improvise something. You know, if you do that, you put all on the shoulder, and it's like, all, not even only on the shoulders of the actors, but also like it's not specific enough, and you didn't, you know, you didn't care. And I think, like, of course you want to have the perspective of the other people and their ideas, but
is it like
also you have to be responsible, you know?
Is it like building a structure of like a foundation, right, on which to stand, right? Like if you talk to a producer, like a really good producer, one of the pitches that they will give you is, I'm going to build the sandbox for you to play in, right? In that sense, the structure of and the sand within is clear. Now play, right? The meticulous planning that clearly has gone into all of your films, actually, really. I mean, like every shot, every light, every angle seems to be completely coherent. And then within that structure is an opportunity, I think, for happy accidents and things to happen in that. Like when I allude to the fact that so much can go wrong, it's my own brain saying working with live eagles can be tricky. Working with non-actors could be tricky. Working in the out in the fields and with actors for a month and a half, as you were, there's this beautiful story I think of where Franz describes being lost in a field with the mist and not being able to see, and allowing her to guide him. Like, what a complete flip to how people make films these days. And I think that's one of the most interesting things I think hopefully Pendance audiences who remember your film and still talk about your film to this day, and those who will watch this film and will hopefully talk about it 2 years later, that they can feel it through that the way that you are approaching filmmaking is certainly not common.
Yeah, but there were different people through all the history doing stuff, if it's like an expedition or is it like, whatever it is. I think when people come together in a group and try to, create something, if it's like a little town or something, or if it's like to go hunting first time with some animals like little wolves or something, I think it's very similar. I think it's like, if you're going to do something that is like something that you create together with the people that you where you have your bonds with, and you're trying to find new territory, and you're trying to find also a territory that is like in the here and now, really hunting you as an idea, that this idea has power over you, and you feel it needs to be told, and you need to give certain things a voice and have to be loyal to the voices of these characters, or a story or an abstract kind of feeling, then I think it's a healthy way, because you try to, it's not about reinventing the wheel, we know we have these cameras, we know we have these lenses, it's a big buffet. And there are these styles, and there are these different kind of methods, and you don't need to reinvent everything. But I think as long as you try to be not afraid to swim in an unknown water, and you're really trying to be loyal to your collaborators and your the characters in the film, I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's like really worth living for this, And I don't understand why you want to make a film that already exists. Why do you want to make a blueprint of a film that already exists? I mean, with film, it's really it's a little bit annoying, because if you look at literature, how free literature can swim, how free literature can be, how weird ways literature goes, and how daring it is, and how brave, and how how crazy beautiful and fragile and contradictional some characters are. And then if you look at some films, what's happening in the big theme park films, or like in very commercially distributed films, I don't understand it, because like it does not take an audience very serious, in my opinion.
I do understand it personally. Like, I understand it. I don't agree with it personally.
Okay.
And I'm sure on some level you also understand it. That sureness, especially when money is involved, right? Backing, I think that's, you alluded to literature. Okay. Free forms of art, which are deeply personal, which includes like what Susanna is, a painter, and literature, which is generally speaking a very individual process of writing something. Film, there's such a huge bankroll element of it that comes into it, where people who maybe don't understand, don't see, have to be calmed down that they're not going to be sued, or they're not going to lose money, and there's an inherent risk aversion that's baked into that. So I think we were talking about this with Aaron on the previous Q&A about audience testing, and sometimes this 120 people who are already sample biased because there are people who agreed from one location to be part of this, and there are certain people who simply will never agree to be part of test audience. So it's never a fair sample size. And these people will say, oh, I didn't get this, I didn't get this. And the producer, who maybe is cautious of, having critics pan the film, or, audiences walk out of the film, will have this note, of course. And if money is a very substantial part of the film, then that note will be more like an order of having to add a line or having to take out a scene that could theoretically offend somebody or confuse somebody. And I think that films that dare, especially films like this, that dare to be open to some level of interpretation, are a dying breed, and are rare because there just isn't. There's a quicker way to make money, and that is to repeat and rinse and repeat. Because and actually, I have something I think I would like to share with you as well. And it was actually in 2015 or 2016, I did an interview with a Bollywood actor for a magazine that I was writing for. And I point blank asked him, why are your films so stupid? And I think that was probably a very poorly worded question. But actually, what I was trying to say in that moment was, why are your films so simplified, and why do they end up with such a happy ending? And he said, well, the people who watch these films are struggling, and they're not trying to go to the cinema and trying to deal with complicated situations in which they're going to be forced to think and cry and do all these things. They actually are going to cinema to escape. Which brings me to, this concept of needs being met through art. And some people will have this need for higher conceptualization and self-actualization that perhaps you would have in your cinema viewing experience. You're going to the cinema to be provoked and to have things in you. But that's because your needs are met on some level, right? There has to be some element of that. But to those who are hungry, starving, and have other problems, they're not necessarily going to go to the cinema to deal with someone else's problems. They want to go to the cinema for the same reason that they, as 6-year-olds, wanted to go to the theme park. And so the bookend of this extensive note, this is not like a Q&A. I apologize if I'm taking time, but I think I would love your reaction to this, is that we often look at the result, which is the film, that is, stupid, or not stupid. It's the wrong word, stupid. I often use that word. It's simplified or derivative or the same. And we look at that and we say, why is this film being made? But that's just one side of the balancing beam. And the other side of the balancing beam is, who is this being made for, and what are they going through?
No, I mean, definitely, I was like not specific enough with what I said before, because like it would not be more far away from me to say, in this huge spectrum of what a film can be, there only needs to be like this author-driven whatever films. I don't say this, I enjoy also a lot sometimes, like for example, like the Rigid Gemstones, this comedy series, from how is it called, David Gordon Green,
Yeah.
It's nice to watch sometimes something like this, and I don't have any problem with. That's a beautiful thing, that there is like such a huge palette, And I was more thinking about. I mean, anyway, everyone can do whatever they want and however they want to do it, and there is nothing right or nothing wrong. It's like it's beautiful to be able to still explore within cinema. And I think like it's very beautiful, to see people who work on stuff that is wild and new and inspiring. And
Yeah.
I don't know how it happens, but sometimes it happens that you see something that really inspires you, And
Yeah.
and I think like this is for me like the biggest gift, and it can be anything, It can be like Tim and Eric, and they have like a wild idea, and it's like it gives you something and you're inspired. But as long as some work does it, if it's like a sculpture or a painting or a book or a song or whatever it is, or a film. But I think like in the end, and even if it's like super entertaining and whatever, like Don't Look Up or something like this, if there is something written in the DNA of a work that is giving you a shock, and the shock is not a shock. Oh, it's so, it's hurting me so hard, or oh, I feel like throwing up. But like with a shock, I mean like an emotional or physical sensation. It can be very personal because like the way how you were socialized or you were coming up. But if this is not there in a work, I think it's missing some point. And you can find it in the best, also in all the good commercial works, you can find it, even in advertisements. There is not the category, all of the commercial stuff is like a certain kind of a box. I think every work that is like where someone really took it like to a level where they tried to really hit an essence.
Yeah.
And there is a shock there, and I think that's the responsibility that we have.
I think most art, film, commercial, whatever, starts out as a really good idea that over some period of processing and filtering becomes something else. And depending on how much processing and what type of processing and what type of filtration happens, then that essence is lost. And I think what you're talking about is fair. 21 Jump Street, very funny movie, probably connects to somebody. And, there's a place for that and a place for art house cinema. And there's a place for everything because there's honesty and truth and in both. And it's not to say in the context of this Q&A to say one is right and one is wrong or one should
Definitely not. Who would we be to judge about anything? This is like, judging, this is like the problem, We live now in a time with all of this social media stuff where it's so easy, like for digital natives, to be raised in a situation where you judge. And of course, like it's all individuals. Everyone has a name, there is not the digital natives. But what I want to say is like, it's so much harder, to keep yourself away from judging and try to be open and try to be curious. And what is stronger than ego? Because like if you fight with yourself with ego, you just have to look at your curiosity. The curiosity is so much bigger than the fucking ego. So there's no problem with the ego. The ego is okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's I can't remember who said it, but it's a beautiful quote, which is to say to understand yourself is to understand everyone. It's like to actually, be able to empathize and understand everyone. And even the most, seemingly polar opposite, ridiculous person, you would not judge that person if you were truly okay with yourself. You would find some level of empathy and humanity in that person because they are, in fact, human. I don't want to be so selfish, just to continue with the theme. There's like so many audience questions here, and I don't want to.
This is this Confucius way kind of stuff,
Yeah.
where you try to find, a balance and rebalancing, not only with yourself, but in Luzifer, we try to show a film where people try to rebalance with nature,
Mm-hmm. We have a question here. I'm curious if Susanna's character is a metaphor for Mother Earth.
This is not the Darren Aronofsky film, where it's about the Mother Earth. No, it's like probably she could say something to it, and it would be very interesting. Of course, you can see it like this. There's nothing wrong. You can see it however you want. If this was there, She's a warrior for the sinking Titanic, how she always said it in improvisations, Titanic as like the earth,
Yeah.
But I think she is like the warrior for it, but I don't have an interpretation that makes any sense. I think it's beautiful however you will see it, I think Susanne would love it.
Love that question.
She would love, to be a metaphor for Mother Earth. So that her character would be that.
That's interesting. This question, I'm sure you can answer pretty briefly, but what was your first meeting with Franz like? From Michael. Thank you, Michael.
It was very nice. It was like he was wearing some leather trousers, like the people in the mountains, to show me that he can be a mountain guy. It was funny. No, he was really sweet.
No, that's funny. This film is visually stunning. What was your process of selecting the right cinematographer? I think I alluded to it earlier that this was quite the hell of a process for you.
Yeah, it was a very, very long process, and I was happy in the end to find Peter Flinkenberg. I wanted to do To the Night already with Peter Flinkenberg, but he was not available back then. And he's a hell of a Finnish guy. and in the first week of shooting, like a big piece of wood, like in a cave, where like some dead deer was hanging on, fell on his head, and he was like seeing double and black and white for like half an hour. It was, and he still finished the film, you know.
That's unbelievable. Um, I have a funny story to tell you about this film. When we downloaded it, computer crashed for 6 hours.
Yeah.
So just it's not because of the size of the film either. I have a streaking suspicion that this whole exorcism thing has cursed the file of the film, which caused the hard drive failure. Because I was like, unbelievable. Even the Facebook thing that the Instagram thing that we posted about it, it was the only film that resized. I was like, what is it with this film medium that is consistently causing technology to fail everywhere? And it's such a funny thing to think about, given the thematic overlaps with your own work. I guess one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you was, and I guess we have time for one final question, is this concept of a real exorcism. Like, what is that first feeling that you had towards this? Because this story is based on a true story, and it's not like it's older story that you read, and you were drawn to something that I have to make a script about this. I have to make a film about this. So what is it that drew you initially to that?
The contradiction, that there is like in a very very intense microcosm, you can explore a theme of ideology, and the contradiction of a son who really wants to save his mother, and does not understand by using her tools of religion that this becomes really the opposite of saving someone. And like these opposite roles, the contradictions of characters, and like in a microcosm, a film about ideology, that was very very much like interesting to me.
There was another question which I can't pull up here because it was on Facebook, and I'm currently barred from using from posting on Facebook right now. But the question was, were you drawn? Was there some subject inspiration from the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave?
I mean, there is a cave in the film, but it was like a big thank you from the gods of filmmaking when we found this location with this beautiful cave, and there are many things that people through the last festivals said what the cave stands for them, and I think it's all beautiful what they said. But yeah.
And there was another final question about the drones, the use of these drones as a sort of menacing intrusion into serenity and nature. And so this theme of technology and nature has been explored in several films throughout Pendants, and I'm curious what I'm trying to ask the most interesting question in the world here, but it's not going to come out of me right now. But I'm curious how consciously you were approaching this this nature versus technology and this last place. Sorry, let me bridge this a little bit better. There's a film, Naya. Have you seen it? Short film. It's at Pendants. So if you have a pass, definitely check it out. It's talking about this wolf that walked through and it's like there's all these cameras in the forest that are capturing this real wolf, and it's a true story, and how this wolf is encroaching on the humans' territory and how out of place it feels. And I thought that thematically the two films are exploring this concept so well, of that there's so little privacy left in this world away from spying eyes. And I'm curious how consciously, against the backdrop of a film about exorcism, is you were trying to create a film about privacy and seclusion and the need for peace.
I think you said it all. It's difficult to add there something. I have the feeling again that we try to explore this theme of culture versus nature, but it was like obvious because we are living right now in a time like this, And if you are loyal to a film that you make in the here and now, and if you're loyal to the spirit of these characters, you will find, as when you research a lot, you will find situations like we found, the people with the drones who fly there around with the drones and film the landscape for the ski resorts and stuff like this. And suddenly we had the antagonist image of the eagles, we had the drones, and it was beautiful, but it was really only because we took the time for the research to find them.
And it's the juxtaposition, like the visual juxtaposition between the eagle and the drone.
It was then, I mean, it kind of wrote itself and wanted it to be like this, and it was for us very obvious once we saw these drones and once we saw the people photographing the ski resorts and filming them with these drones, that we want this to be a part of the film. And then I rewrote the script and then made them more character, and I made it more like the indifference of nature, the indifference of technology, and it changed everything. But I felt it was very beautiful because it helped us to make something where we didn't need so many words, and where we could create with sound and images something that we were very much falling in love with.
I think there's a growing tension within the film, and the sound of those drones, it's very, very intimidating every time it starts to pop up. And it's something that we were discussing as programmers. We were thinking, like, after we watched the film, we were outside and we were expecting at some point for drones to show up. It was very surreal for us. So thank you for creating this film. Thank you for so honestly making the film and with your collaborators. And thank you for sharing it with Pendance. We're so happy to have you back. It was such a huge thing for us that Luzifer play at Pendance. Any final words for your audience who will watch?
No, Robert, I'm very thankful that you and your collaborators are doing this beautiful festival, and I hope, like, on a different edition, it's possible to be there in physical reality again. And please take care, and I hope that you all, whoever is listening, are going to watch some nice films that hopefully really inspire you. And thanks for watching our film, and have a beautiful day in Toronto.
Have a beautiful day, Peter, and enjoy your music session and recording.
Bye.
Bye.